Okay, what we're going to do in this video is show how to get an 8bitdo Bluetooth controller to reconnect, connect in the first place as well to RetroPie, and make sure that when you restart your Raspberry Pi it restarts with the joypad as well, so all reconnects are automatic and so you don't have to do anything manually. Now I've got a separate video that's very similar to this based on RetroPie 3.4, and anything after, I think everything after 3.4, including 3.4, is based on Debbie and Jesse, and previous to that is Debbie and Wheezy. And the wiki that I've added to, you can see the different steps in there that shows, if you, depending on the version of RetroPie, what to follow. But what a few people are finding, particularly on the forums they're mentioning and some YouTube comments, is that on RetroPie 3.6 the restart isn't automatic. So when you restart your Pi and turn your controller on, it's not reconnecting. And it is important to differentiate between pairing and connecting. Pairing is just to make sure that the device you're connecting to is sort of aware and allowed to connect to the controller. So the pairing and the trusting is one thing, and separately the connecting is just to literally do that, to make sure that they're talking to each other. And it's the connecting that's been the problem when you restart. So this video is going to show how to add a step to make sure that the RetroPie system, the Raspberry Pi, when it restarts, it manually, if you like, forces a connect. So that's what we're taking a look at. I'm using a Raspberry Pi 3. It's got an inbuilt Bluetooth controller, but I've tried the same thing on a Pi 2, and the same problem and the same solution seem to work, and the problem still exists. So I think whilst this might not be necessarily the best way of doing it, there might be other ways of doing this, but it works for me to make sure that those 8bitdo controllers do reconnect okay. I'm using an 8bitdo FC30 Pro in this example, so that's what I'll be pairing and connecting in the video. And obviously there's a range of them and they're really popular, so that's why this video is geared towards supporting them. The sort of design and the usage really lends itself towards the retro gaming, particularly on a Raspberry Pi. So I know a lot of you out there have got these, and whilst it did seem to connect automatically when I did the 3.4 video, it seems for whatever reason slightly different on 3.6, so here I've added that extra step. Now we can do a lot of the pairing process to start with, and I'll run through it from start to end. If you want to check out the wiki for just the sort of bullet points, if you like, go and have a look at the review there, all the details there. But in the video I'll walk you through pairing it to start with, and also the manual step to make sure that Emulation Station sees it and that it automatically reconnects. So you can do some of this through the Emulation Station interface under the RetroPie menu, but because we're going to do a couple of custom files, it's probably easier just to get to the command line. So to do that, I'm just going to hit, as it says on the screen, F4 to get to that interface, and from there we'll make sure this reconnects. Okay, so F4. Okay, at the command line, what we're going to do is first run the RetroPie setup. And firstly though, if you just want a quick route to check this out, go and have a look at the wiki, because I'll update that with the details so you can see a quick and easy way. But this video is just going to walk you through all of the steps. But yeah, if you just want to get to the point, check out the wiki. Okay, so now we're in the command line interface. What we're going to do is make a couple of changes after running the RetroPie setup to make sure that this can reconnect on startup. And it's important just to differentiate. The pairing isn't a problem, like the pairing and the trusting of the device, it's the reconnection when you come to use the RetroPie again. And typically that's shown on a 8bitdo controller by having a solid blue light. So when it's not connected, it just keeps flashing, even whether it's paired or not, it won't connect. Okay, so in here, if we go to change directory to retropie-setup, and in here we're going to type sudo and run the RetroPie setup script. So that's sudo space full stop / retropie _ setup, and as soon as my computer catches up, okay, right, retropie _ setup, press enter there, and we're into the setup script. Now just a reminder, make sure that your Pi has got internet connection. And the first thing we'd do, I'm using RetroPie 3.6, the image, so it's as of that date it was released, which I think was some point late February. And it says at the top here, you can see that the last commit of the RetroPie setup script I've got is 5 weeks old, and for reference, today is the 2nd of April 2016, so 5 weeks ago is basically the snapshot of 3.6. But in terms of the setup script, I just want to make sure I've got a current setup script, because there might be a few improvements since, so we can do that by running the update RetroPie setup, and that'll go and grab the latest version. Sometimes maybe the latest version of the setup script might be expecting some updated binaries, but typically I find it's not really an issue. So that's what I'm doing. As I said, it's a standard 3.6 image and I'm updating the script. Okay, so it's done that. Now, just because it's habit, I'm going to hit cancel to quit out of it and then restart it. And you can see at the top here, the last commit now was only 2 days ago, so that was the end of March. So it's got quite a few more changes, and it's worth doing in case maybe there's some improvements to things like the Bluetooth connection that we'll be using. But anyway, that's the version I'm using. I used 3.6 image, and I've updated it to be the latest, which is 2 days ago. Okay, now we go to setup, and actually I better get the controller. Okay, it's just charging that, so I'll just make sure it's off at the moment. Okay, so that's there. Yeah, like I say, I've got an FC30 Pro. That's the one I'll be using. It's typically pretty straightforward to connect to, and I also know the MAC address of it, of the Bluetooth device in there, so it kind of helps when I pair it as well to know which one I'm looking at. But anyway, okay, so we're going down here to configure Bluetooth devices, and if we click this, the first thing it's going to do is say that it hasn't got the Bluetooth programs installed, and you can see down here it's going to install them now. It doesn't take very long, so I'll just let that run through. It's just going to grab a couple of programs, download and install, and then it'll use those to identify your Bluetooth controller. And the reason I'm doing the 8bitdo focus on this one is that a lot of people tend to go for them now. They are pretty good for sort of retro design and feel, as well as using with RetroPie and a Raspberry Pi. And do bear in mind that a key difference between using RetroPie 3.4 onwards, obviously we're using 3.6 here, is that it uses Debian Jessie, and before that it's Debian Wheezy. So there's a fair amount of difference in terms of the configuration for Bluetooth on that, and you can see in the wiki I've separated it to show the older version and how to go about that. But the changes we'll make here are also specific to Debian Jessie, so just bear that in mind depending on the version of RetroPie you're using. Okay, so first thing we'll do is register and connect. Before I hit enter there, I'm just going to turn the controller on and make sure it's flashing, looking to pair. Okay, so it's looking to pair at the moment. Hit enter. You can also, if you want, on the controller blank out previous pairs, but it probably shouldn't matter. Okay, so that one, I don't know what that one is, but it's not my controller, so I'm going to hit cancel and do it again. And I'm also going to press a couple of buttons, because for whatever reason that seems to, yeah, now it's showing. I don't know why it does that time and not before. Maybe it likes input whilst you're searching for it, but it's an option. Anyway, but because on the right hand side here it should say the name of the device, I'm going to hit cancel again just to show what it should be doing here, and hit enter. And I'll press a couple of buttons on the controller again, just in case that helps anything. So quite often it does change that there to show me the name of the controller. I'll try it again. Okay, it's not doing it at the moment. I mean, it doesn't matter, it's just aesthetic really, but it does help to know the name of the controller. I'll show you another way you can do this in a minute. Also, this other way that I can show you might help you identify it on this list, or if it's not showing. So it's another way to make sure it appears on the list. But regardless, that's my device. I want to pair it. I'm going to hit OK. And as the instruction says, you've got to use the security mode when you pair, and try the first one first. Display yes, no. I'm going to hit enter. And typically I find this one works. So successfully registered, and also as that box popped up on my controller, the blue LEDs went solid, so it obviously paired and connected at that stage, and I can see my controller is currently connected fine. So that's done, that's paired, trusted it, connected it, and technically we could fire up Emulation Station now and we could sort out playing games from that point, but obviously you're going to turn your Pi off at some point, so we've got to make sure that it connects on restart. So what I'll do, I'll just cancel back to the command line, and what I'll do, before we make the change to make sure it reconnects on startup, I'll just show you what you can do to check the name of your device. There's probably a few ways of doing this, but this works for me. So we're going to run a command, sudo, and the command is called Bluetooth CTL. There we go. And you can see there that it's already it's showing me the device. That's the name, and you'll need this for one of the steps later that's shown in the wiki. And the step that this is needed for is where Emulation Station needs to understand the name of the device so it can see it, basically. So that part that I've highlighted is useful. You'll need that later on. Okay, don't need to use this tool anymore, but if we did, you can then type power on, and then you can type scan on, and that's running in the background. In, I don't know, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, you'll get an update again as it scans, and that can often, for whatever reason, it seems to help that RetroPie script we were on identify it. So if your controller doesn't appear in that script, that page we were on a minute ago where it's looking for Bluetooth, I've quit out here before, run this, go back, and it is okay. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. And then when you're done, you can just type exit, and that's it. This here, it's called RetroPie, and it's a controller, so I guess that's the identifier of the internal Bluetooth controller. So that's not what you'll need. You want to make sure that you're looking for the controller, which is that there. In my case, it's an 8bitdo FC30 Pro. Okay, so like I say, you probably don't need to do that because you're probably paired and it's all fine. And looking at my controller now, it's all paired and connected. Now, what we're going to do is, this is the bit that's different. If you restart your Pi and it doesn't connect, try this step. So we're going to create a little script, and the little script basically forces it to connect. It specifically tells it to go and look to connect. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to create a little text or a script in the binary folder. The bin isn't a bin, it's a I think it's short for binary, so it's not necessarily correct to put it here. You can put it anywhere, but as long as you remember which directory you've put it in, it's fine. So I'm calling mine connect-bluetooth.sh, but you can call it whatever you like, it doesn't really matter. So you can call, just create a text file basically that we're going to put a script into. So I'm going to create it in that folder. You can do the same if you want. Press enter there. So obviously it doesn't exist, so it's empty, and I'm going to populate it with some text. So you can copy that. That's hash exclamation mark / bin / bash. Then we're telling it to run the Bluetooth command. Then we're turning it on in connect, and then we're telling it to specifically connect to that controller I've got. So if I take my MAC address, and you'll need to take your MAC address, which you saw on that previous screen or the RetroPie pairing screen. There. So I've put my MAC address in there and replaced that MAC address section. Now, these couple of files that we're creating, they might take 5 minutes to do, and it's a bit faff, but you only have to do it once, so it's not too much trouble. Okay, so we've put that in, we've quit that, Control X, and it says at the bottom, do you want to save? Say yes. And what file name do you want to use? That one's fine. Press enter, and that's done there. And then the next file we use is one that's kind of like a configuration file for that script that we've just created. Although before we do that, actually, we just need to make sure that script is executable. So, whoa, did that a bit quick. There we go. So we're going to run that as sudo chmod this file, but the file is in the bin directory, so that should work. So I'm saying run it with elevated permissions, change the permissions, add executable to it, and this is the file I want to do it to, and that's done. Okay. Now we create the configuration file for that script that the Pi will use on startup. I'm calling this connect-bluetooth.service, but you can call it whatever you want. I think it still has to have .service, but yeah, you can call that something else. And the folder it goes in is etc systemd system, and then you put the file. So I'm going to create the empty file there. And now I don't know much about these configuration files, but I've got this to do what I want, so I'm just going to use this as the example. So you've got the description of it. You can put pretty much what you want there, it seems. And this is the important line, the exec start, and that's just a path to that file we just created. So in my example it would be bin and connect-bluetooth.sh. Okay, so we'll Control X there, say save and enter, and that's that done. Then the last step with all this is just to make it kind of like installing it to make sure the system's aware of that service. And the command for that is sudo systemctl enable, and then we're just calling the script here. So press enter there, and it's installed. That's it. So now if I restart the Pi, it would connect automatically. Emulation Station still wouldn't see it because we've got to do that extra file that we have to do with any of the versions before, so that's not a new step, but it will connect. So at the moment I'm just going to turn my controller off, so we'll try that in a minute. But before, we'll also do that standard step, which is to create the udev rule. So that means Emulation Station will see this file. And again, this is in the wiki and has been for quite a while. So, oh, that was a bit quick. There we go. So sudo nano, we're going to create this file called 10-local.rules, and that's the directory it's going to put it into. So I press enter there. Again, this is all in the wiki, so you can copy and paste out of there. Okay, and in here it's just a single line you've got to put in. But the important thing on it is over here, the name of the joypad, and that's exactly as we saw earlier. So I've just copied that into there. If your joypad's called something else, you need to put the name that Bluetooth identifies it as in there. And that's all just needed so Emulation Station can see it. And that's pretty much it. So if I Control X out of that, say yes, I want to save it, press enter, done. Now we'll reboot, and I find turning the controller on pretty much right as soon as the Pi starts. So just shortly after those four raspberries appear at the top of the screen, turn the controller on, and by the time we get to Emulation Station, it should connect, or at least that's what I'm hoping mine does now. So I'll reboot it, and we'll see what Emulation Station says. Okay, and we're rebooting Emulation Station. It's coming back up at the moment, and the good news for me is my 8bitdo has just then gone blue solid on the LED on the side. The blue LED is now on, it's connected, there's no problem there. And also Emulation Station now can see the joypad. So the two different parts there are, one, you've got on the screen Emulation Station saying one gamepad detected, and that is specifically because we edited that file or created that file called 10-local.rules. So that was the one that we put the name of the gamepad into. So that's why Emulation Station can see it, and it can also see it because we decided to put the force reconnect on as well. So that's why the blue light's gone solid, because we created that script and told RetroPie or the Raspberry Pi to run that on startup. So that's why I've got a solid blue light on my controller now. So if I'm to hold down a button on the controller, you'll see on the screen the name appear. And in there we're just going to connect the controller as normal. So I'll just run down those controls: up, down, left, right, start, select, A, B, X, Y, left bottom, right bottom. Left top is the sort of the lower shoulder button, or on the FC30 Pro it's just the one on the inner, because they're all in one line, so it's the slightly more central one. That's left top, and that's right top. Now you notice on left top and right top it says not defined, so for whatever reason Emulation Station isn't capturing that button press, but I'll show you what's gone on the back end there and how you can fix that in case you get a similar issue. Then you've got left thumb, which is sort of clicking down on the left analog, and the same for the right analog. Oh, I've misclicked that bit. You can see it's got axis 2. That's because I pressed it a bit wrong, but I can carry on here. Up, down, left, right, and the right, up, down, left, right. Okay, that grabbed the wrong one because I did the wrong button press earlier, but we can skip that. And to get around that problem, just press the right button, you'll be fine. Press A. Okay, now we're in Emulation Station, and you'll find that obviously in Emulation Station it's fine, you can navigate using your joypad, go into the different systems, and that's no problem. And separately, if you run a RetroArch based emulator, whether it's for the Mega Drive or the Super Nintendo, whatever, the controls should be fine there. Because I have seen some people say that whilst Emulation Station is fine to control, the game they're running isn't. Well, I'll show you in a moment where the controller file is, so you can see what should be working, and if there's a mistake in it, you can always correct it. But that is only for the RetroArch based one. So if you've got a standalone emulator like dgen or an FBA or like PyFBA or something that doesn't use a RetroArch configuration, then you might need to either create it if it's not already there, or just be aware that Emulation Station takes a different config file to the game. So whilst it should all be fine because this has created a RetroArch controller file, you might, if there's an issue in it, you might have to edit it, or if it's a different emulator, then go and have a look at that emulator controller file, because that could be the issue. But yeah, we'll just drop into the command line now, and I'll show you what got created that we've done here. Okay, here we are at the command line, and what I'm going to show is that controller file that was created when we logged into Emulation Station there. So change to opt/retropi/configs/all/retroarch-joypad. You can see it now, we've got one file. That's because we just configured one controller, and we can edit and read that with nano space and then the file name. Okay, and here is what the games, or the RetroArch games, will be using. Excuse me. So if the data in here is wrong, then yeah, you won't be able to play that game. But in my case, for this controller, there's no problem at all. All of these are right. The only thing it's missing is the R2 buttons. So I think I've got an example here. You can see in this file, it's got the R3, it's logged like the analog press, and it's got also the standard R, which is here. So you've got right button 18 and left button there, left button 17. So it's got the normal shoulder buttons, but it hasn't got, if I go down here, that's not right. There. So it hasn't got these two. It hasn't got the left, the second left, which is like if it was a bumper button or a shoulder button, it would be the one below. On the FC30 Pro, they're all in a line anyway. But these are the two that Emulation Station, for whatever reason, didn't log. But I can just put them in there manually if I want. You'll probably find your controller's got all the buttons there anyway. But this is where you look for what the games are looking for. So it's a slightly different topic to what this video is about. The video is about making sure it reconnect without issue when you reboot. But just so you know, that's where the controller file is for the games. Okay. If there's any questions, please put them in the comments. Do check out the wiki, because it's got a much more condensed, quick way of seeing all the data that I've put in this video. The video is just really to sort of walk you through so you can see exactly what's working. But like I say, this is RetroPie 3.6 getting Bluetooth 8bitdo devices to restart without issue. Okay, thanks.